Before Jesus healed the blind man who had never seen his mother's face, before he raised Lazarus from 4 days in the tomb, before he calmed a storm that was about to swallow his disciples whole, there was always one thing he did first. One sacred moment, one ancient practice so powerful that when you understand it, everything about your prayer life will shift forever. And I need you to stay with me because what I'm about to reveal isn't just history. It's the missing piece you've been searching for every time you've cried out to heaven and wondered why your prayers feel like they're hitting the ceiling. If you want to deepen your prayer life right now, type the words, "Teach me," in the comments below. Type it with faith. Type it with expectation. And hit that like button, because every single time you do, YouTube shows this message to someone else who desperately needs to hear it tonight, someone who's been praying and waiting and wondering if God even hears them anymore. Let me take you back 2,000 years to the dusty roads of ancient Galilee. Picture this with me. Jesus of Nazareth walking through villages, and everywhere he goes, miracles explode into reality. The deaf suddenly hear their children's laughter, the lame throw away their crutches and dance, demons flee screaming, storms obey his voice like servants. But here's what most people miss. Here's what changed everything for me when I discovered it. Jesus wasn't just a miracle worker. He was a Jewish rabbi, deeply rooted in the ancient traditions of his people, and every single thing he did was steeped in practices that went back centuries before his birth. And there's one practice, one prayer pattern that he used before performing every single miracle. And when the rabbis and scholars started paying attention, when they looked at the original texts in the language Jesus actually spoke, they found something that will blow your mind. You see, in Jewish tradition, there's this beautiful concept called brashot. It's the Hebrew word for blessings, but it's so much deeper than how we use that word today. For the ancient Jewish people, a bracha wasn't just something nice you said before a meal. It was a way of life. It was how you acknowledged that every single breath, every drop of water, every piece of bread, every moment of existence came from the hand of God. The rabbis taught that a person should say at least 100 blessings every single day, 100 times acknowledging God's presence, God's provision, God's sovereignty over all of creation. Can you imagine that? We struggle to pray once a day, and they were blessing God 100 times from sunrise to sunset. And this wasn't religious duty. This was intimacy. This was walking through life with a constant awareness that you're not alone, that every good thing flows from the Father of lights. And Jesus, growing up in Nazareth, studying Torah in the synagogue, learning from the teachers of his day, he was saturated in this tradition. He breathed it, he lived it, it was woven into the fabric of his daily existence. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. When you go through the Gospels, when you read the miracle accounts carefully, you start to see a pattern emerge, like a golden thread running through every supernatural moment. Right before the miracle happens, right before heaven breaks into earth, Jesus does something specific. He does something that any Jewish person watching would have immediately recognized. He looks up to heaven, he gives thanks, and then, only then, does the miracle flow. Let me show you what I mean, because this is going to wreck you in the best possible way. In John chapter 11, Lazarus is dead, not sleeping, not sick, but 4 days dead in a sealed tomb in the Middle Eastern heat. His sisters Mary and Martha are devastated. They're angry, they're confused. They told Jesus, "If you had been here, our brother would not have died." And Jesus stands at that tomb, and before he speaks the words that will shatter death itself, listen to what he does. He looks up, he lifts his eyes to heaven, and he says, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." Did you catch that? Lazarus is still dead in the tomb, And Jesus is already thanking God. He's giving thanks before the miracle manifests in the physical realm. He's operating from a place of such deep connection with the Father that the answer is already real to him before anyone else can see it. Or look at Mark, chapter 7. There's a deaf man with a speech impediment, and they bring him to Jesus begging for healing. And Jesus takes him away from the crowd, puts his fingers in the man's ears, touches his tongue, and then, the text says, looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, which means, be opened. Again, that upward look, that connection to heaven. That acknowledgement that the power doesn't come from Jesus the man, but flows through him from the Father above. He's showing us something profound here. He's demonstrating that miracles don't come from techniques or formulas or shouting loud enough. They flow from intimacy. They flow from connection. They flow from a heart that lives in constant communion with the source of all life. And then there's the feeding of the 5,000. Maybe you've heard this story so many times it's lost its wonder, but stay with me because there's gold here. Thousands of people, miles from any town, and they're hungry. The disciples panic. Send them away, they say. We can't feed this many people. But a boy offers his lunch, 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Barely enough for himself, let alone thousands. And what does Jesus do? Luke chapter 9, verse 16 tells us, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. He looked up. He gave thanks. And then the impossible happened. Bread multiplied in his hands. Fish kept coming, 12 baskets of leftovers from a boy's lunch. And it all started with gratitude. It all started with that upward glance that said, Father, you are the source. You are the provider. Everything flows from you. Now, here's what's shaking me to my core as I share this with you, and I believe it's going to hit you right where you are tonight. Maybe you've been praying for something for months, for years. Maybe you've cried out to God so many times you've lost count. Maybe you've wondered if He's even listening, if He even cares, if your prayers are just bouncing off empty space. And what if the issue isn't that God isn't answering, but that we've forgotten how to pray? What if we've turned prayer into a shopping list, a cosmic vending machine, a last resort when everything else fails? What if we've forgotten that prayer is supposed to be connection before it's ever petition? What if we're supposed to start with thanksgiving, with looking up, with acknowledging who God is before we ask for what we need? Because here's the prophetic word I believe is for someone watching right now, and you'll know if it's you because your spirit is going to leap inside your chest. You've been praying from desperation instead of from relationship. You've been coming to God the way a stranger approaches a king, nervous and uncertain, instead of the way a child runs to their father. You've been so focused on the miracle you need that you've forgotten the miracle of who He already is. And God is saying tonight, stop striving, stop begging, stop trying to convince me. I already know what you need. I already have the answer prepared, but I want you to connect with me first. I want you to look up. I want you to remember who I am. I want you to give thanks for what I've already done before you ask for what comes next. This is the secret that was hiding in plain sight in every miracle Jesus performed. This is the ancient Jewish wisdom that transformed a prayer life from duty into delight, from struggle into surrender, from words bouncing off the ceiling into conversations that shift the atmosphere of heaven itself. And the most beautiful part, the part that should make tears well up in your eyes right now, is that Jesus wasn't showing off. He wasn't performing. Every time He looked up to heaven, every time He gave thanks, He was showing us the way home. He was modeling what intimacy with the Father looks like. He was demonstrating that the Christian life isn't about working up enough faith to twist God's arm. It's about resting in a relationship where the answer flows from the connection. The Jewish people understood something we've lost in our modern rush, in our microwave spirituality, in our instant gratification approach to God. They understood that before you ask for anything, you acknowledge everything. Before you cry out for what you don't have, you give thanks for what you do have. Before you beg for a miracle, you remember that every breath in your lungs is already a miracle you didn't earn and could never deserve. And this wasn't just religious ritual. This was the operating system of a life lived in the presence of God. The rabbis taught that when you say a blessing, when you speak a brachot over something, you're not just being polite, you're not just following tradition, you're actually participating in the divine flow of abundance from heaven to earth. You're opening a channel, you're creating a pathway, you're aligning your heart with the heart of the one who owns everything and gives freely to all. And Jesus, being fully God but also fully man, being the divine Son who was also a Jewish rabbi walking dusty roads in first-century Israel, he knew this in his bones. He lived this with every fiber of his being. And what I need you to understand, what's going to revolutionize how you approach God starting tonight, is that Jesus didn't pray to perform miracles. Read that again in your spirit. He didn't pray to perform miracles. The miracles flowed from his prayer life. The supernatural wasn't something he turned on and off like a light switch. It was the natural overflow of a life lived in unbroken communion with the Father. He spent whole nights on mountains talking with God. He rose before dawn to pray while everyone else slept. He withdrew from crowds at the height of his popularity to be alone with the Father. And then, when the moment came, when someone needed healing or deliverance or provision, the power was already there because the connection was already there. Look at how he prayed before raising Lazarus again, because there's a layer here that most people miss, and it's going to wreck your theology in the best way. He says, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." Did you catch that? Jesus says God always hears him. Always. Not sometimes. Not when he prays hard enough or long enough or with enough people. Agreeing with him. Always. The connection is constant. The line is always open. The Father's ear is always turned toward the Son. And Jesus is saying, I'm praying out loud not because I need to convince God, but because these people need to see how this works. They need to understand that miracles come from intimacy, not from begging. They need to know that the Father and I are one, that we're in constant communion, that there's no distance, no delay, no disconnect between my heart and his. And here's the prophetic word for someone right now, and you're going to feel this in your gut like a punch of holy conviction. You've been praying like God is far away when he's been right here the whole time. You've been shouting across a canyon when he's been whispering in your ear. You've been performing prayers like God grades on volume or length or how many verses you quote, when what he's been waiting for is for you to just be still and know that he is God. He's been waiting for you to stop long enough to feel his presence. He's been waiting for you to thank him for what he's already done before you demand what you think he should do next. And tonight, right now, the invitation is to stop striving and start connecting. Stop performing and start communing. Stop begging and start believing that he's already heard you, he's already working, he's already got the miracle in motion. The ancient rabbis had this teaching that's going to blow your mind. They said that gratitude is the highest form of prayer because it declares that God has already acted on your behalf. When you give thanks, you're not just being polite, you're making a prophetic declaration. You're saying, I believe you're good, I believe you're faithful, I believe that even in this hard place, even in this waiting season, even in this impossible situation, you are working all things together for my good because you love me. And that kind of faith, that kind of trust, that kind of rest in God's character, that's what moves heaven. That's what opens doors. That's what shifts atmospheres and breaks chains and makes demons flee and causes angels to move on your behalf. Jesus demonstrated this so powerfully when he fed the 5,000. Think about the absurdity of that moment. He's holding a little boy's lunch. 5 small barley loaves, the bread of the poor, the kind of bread you're almost embarrassed to admit you're eating. 2 small fish, probably dried or pickled, nothing fresh or impressive, and he's standing in front of thousands of hungry people with growling stomachs and expectant eyes. If he was operating from human logic, from natural thinking, this would be the moment to panic. This would be the moment to make excuses, to explain why it's impossible, to send people away disappointed. But instead, he looks up. He gives thanks. And in that moment of gratitude, in that act of acknowledging that God is the source of all provision, the laws of physics bend, matter multiplies. The impossible becomes inevitable, and everyone eats until they're satisfied with baskets left over. Now, I need you to apply this to your life right now, because this isn't just ancient history, this is your future being written in this moment. What's the impossible situation you're facing? What's the need that looks so big, so overwhelming, so beyond your resources that you can't see any way forward? Maybe it's financial, and the bills are piling up faster than the paychecks. Maybe it's relational, and that marriage looks dead, that friendship looks broken beyond repair, that prodigal child seems lost forever. Maybe it's physical, and the doctors have used words like chronic and incurable and terminal. Maybe it's emotional, and the depression is so thick you can barely breathe. The anxiety so constant you can't remember what peace feels like. And you've been praying, you've been asking, you've been crying out, and it feels like nothing is changing. But what if God is waiting for you to shift from petition to position? What if He's waiting for you to move from begging to believing? What if He wants you to start with thanksgiving, with looking up, with acknowledging His goodness and faithfulness before you list all the things that are wrong? Because here's the secret Jesus was showing us. Gratitude isn't denial. Thanksgiving isn't pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's choosing to remember who God is even when circumstances are screaming something different. It's declaring His faithfulness in the past as the foundation for trusting Him in the present and the future. It's saying, God, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't see how this works out. But I know who you are. I remember what you've done. I choose to thank you even here, even now, even in this valley. And when you pray like that, when you pray from that place of connection instead of desperation, something shifts. Not just in your circumstances, though often they shift too, but something shifts in you. Your faith stops being a heavy burden you're carrying and becomes the very air you breathe. Your prayers stop being an exhausting marathon of trying to change God's mind and become a conversation with someone who already knows, who already cares, who already has the solution prepared. You stop approaching God like a distant king who might grant your request if you grovel convincingly enough, and you start running to Him like a child runs to a father who's already holding the gift behind his back, just waiting for you to get close enough to receive it. Jesus looked up to heaven before every miracle because He was showing us that the direction of true power is always vertical before it's horizontal. You have to connect with heaven before you can change earth. You have to touch the supernatural before you can transform the natural. You have to commune with God before you can command circumstances. And the beautiful, stunning, almost too good to be true reality is that God is not hard to reach. He's not playing hide and seek. He's not making you jump through religious hoops. He's right here, right now, closer than your next breath, nearer than your own heartbeat. And He's been waiting for you to stop long enough to notice. So here's what I want you to do, and this is going to change everything if you'll actually do it. Tomorrow morning, before you ask God for a single thing, before you present your list of needs and wants and problems, I want you to spend 10 minutes just thanking Him. Thank Him for waking up this morning. Thank Him for the bed you slept in. Thank Him for the water that comes out of your faucet. Thank Him for eyes that can see and ears that can hear and lungs that can breathe. Thank Him for every good thing He's already done, every prayer He's already answered, every time He's shown up when you thought you were alone. And as you do this, as you practice this ancient Jewish wisdom that Jesus modeled, you're going to feel something shift. The anxiety is going to loosen its grip. The fear is going to lose its voice. The impossibility of your situation is going to look different when viewed from a place of gratitude. Because miracles don't happen because we pray hard enough. They happen because we connect deep enough. They flow from intimacy, not from intensity. They come from a heart that knows God, trusts God, rests in God, even when nothing makes sense. Jesus didn't have to work Himself into an emotional frenzy before healing someone. He didn't have to fast for 40 days before multiplying bread. He didn't have to gather a prayer team before raising the dead. He simply looked up, gave thanks, and let the power that was already flowing through Him touch the need in front of Him, and you have that same Spirit living inside you. You have that same access to the Father. You have that same invitation to live from connection instead of striving. So type, "Teach me" in the comments right now if you're ready for this shift. Type it if you're tired of prayer, feeling like a chore, and you're hungry for it to become a conversation. Type it if you want to learn this ancient way of connecting with God that Jesus modeled before every miracle. And hit that subscribe button because we're going to go deeper into these biblical truths, these ancient practices that transform modern lives. Don't forget to like this video so YouTube can show it to someone else who needs to hear that their prayers are heard, their needs are known, and their Father is already working on their behalf. The prayer Jesus said before every miracle wasn't complicated theology or religious ritual. It was simply this: looking up, connecting with heaven, and giving thanks that God is who He says He is and does what He says He'll do. And when you pray like that, when you live like that, the miracles stop being rare exceptions and start being the natural overflow of a supernatural life. Shalom.